about what happened tenant if the house sold in Canada. In Canada, when a rental property is sold, the lease agreement of the tenant remains in effect and is passed on to the new owner. The new owner assumes the role of the landlord and must adhere to the terms of the existing lease, including the agreed-upon termination date and lease duration, and any applicable rent control regulations. Tenants cannot be evicted merely due to the sale of the property. Tenants cannot be evicted solely due to the sale of the property. If the new owner intends to occupy the property for themselves or a family member, they must follow specific legal protocols and give the tenant appropriate notice. For example, in Ontario, they must issue the tenant an N12 notice, which necessitates 60 days notice along with compensation equivalent to 1 month's rent. Here's a more detailed outline. 1. The new owner assumes the lease. Lease transfer. The lease agreement that exists between the tenant and the original landlord remains effective and binding with the new owner. Here, this means that the new owner takes on all the duties and responsibilities of the former landlord. 2. No automatic eviction due to sale. Only, the mere sale of the property does not provide justification for the automatic termination of the tenancy or grant the new owner the authority to evict the tenant. 3. Tenant rights are preserved. Tenants maintain their rights during the sale process and cannot be compelled to vacate before their lease term concludes or without appropriate notice and compensation. Conversely, this implies that the tenant will keep paying rent and the new landlord must uphold the property and meet other commitments specified in the lease. 4. New landlord's rights. The new landlord holds the same rights and obligations as the former one, which includes the capacity to raise rent in accordance with the guidelines established by the Residential Tenancies Act after a 12-month period following the last increase. Importantly here, the highest permitted rent increase is typically the guideline amount established by the province annually. 5. Eviction for personal use. And 12. If the new owner or their close family member, parent, child, or spouse plans to occupy the property, they are required to follow the legal procedures to terminate the tenancy. For instance, in Ontario, landlords wishing to move into the property can issue a N12 notice to the tenant. This N12 notice must provide the tenant with a minimum of 60 days notice and 1 month's rent as compensation. The notice must be delivered before the conclusion of the current rental period. 6. Compensation might be necessary. If the new owner is terminating the lease for their personal use, they might also need to provide the tenant with compensation, such as 1 month's rent, to assist with moving. Here, this applies not only to fixed rent, but also to month-to-month arrangements. The new owner cannot evict the tenant solely due to the sale. In addition, landlords are still required to adhere to the appropriate termination procedures. For instance, in Ontario, tenants are entitled to compensation when the landlord sells the property, even if the new owner does not plan to reside there. This compensation is usually equivalent to 1 month's rent and should be issued before the termination date specified in the notice, if applicable. Alternatively, the new owner could present the tenant with another suitable unit as a form of compensation before the end of the lease. 7. Bad faith eviction. When a new owner claims they are relocating but fails to do so, and this claim is a deceptive tactic to terminate the tenancy, it is classified as a bad faith eviction, allowing the tenant to submit a complaint. Here, if a landlord serves an N12 notice based on misleading claims, such as not genuinely intending to occupy the property themselves, it may qualify as a bad faith eviction. Tenants have options to respond to this situation, which may include filing a complaint with the landlord and tenant board. 8. Agreements to terminate. And 11. For example, in Ontario, the landlords have the option to provide tenants with compensation to voluntarily end their lease, an 11 agreement. Here, this approach is frequently utilized to streamline the sales process, as an empty property can be more attractive to potential buyers. Finally, the tenant is not required to accept an N11 agreement. In conclusion, when a landlord sells a property, the lease held by the tenant usually passes on to the new owner. If the new owner intends to occupy the property, they are required to give appropriate notice and compensation. Tenants must understand their rights and should consult legal counsel if they feel they have been wrongfully evicted. Disclaimer: this information is intended to provide general educational guidelines and should not be interpreted as a substitute for professional advice. The author of this article assumes no liability for any losses or damages, and neither assumes any responsibility for errors or omissions in the content or for any actions resulting from the use or reliance on this information provided. You are encouraged to seek guidance from qualified professionals for any specific concerns or decisions. Thanks for watching! If you like educational video like this, please subscribe to my YouTube video, Hagher Media. Thanks for watching!